This is Law of Attraction Explored. I'm Tim Grimes. Some of you are probably wondering about my coaching, so I thought I would just take a minute to explain what it is that I offer. What I do with people is get real deep. And what do I mean by we get deep? Well, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know exactly what I mean when I say that. The kind of coaching that I offer is meant to transform your life. And I feel very confident that it will transform your life and that you'll enjoy doing it. And if you don't, to be frank, you don't have to pay me. I like working with people who want to go deep, people who are willing to explore what's going on the inside and realize that there's nothing wrong with them and that what is going on the inside is actually good. And dare we say it, what's going on the inside is actually God. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, you can always email me at info@radicalcounselor.com, or you can just go to my website, radicalcounselor.com. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. So inner work is so often different than the outward approach that we might take when it comes to feeling satisfied about something. And by that I mean, if you're hungry, you get up, you go to the refrigerator, and you get yourself something to eat. But inner work in terms of satisfaction is often not like that. The process is seemingly more confusing and convoluted a lot of the time. And one might ask, if it's so simple to get up and get something to eat, why is it difficult to feel good in the moment, knowing what we know, knowing the tools that we have at our disposal, knowing the stuff that we've talked about in this podcast and that other great spiritual and religious and self-improvement, self-development teachers and psychologists, therapists, shamans, healers have all discussed over the centuries and eons? Well, a lot of the time I think it's just because inner work, it's not obvious what to do. Even though it seems like intellectually, when we talk about these things, it should be obvious, to actually practice them is much more difficult than what we hear or read on paper. It's a consistent experiential process. And it's one that we should enjoy doing, in the sense that why wouldn't we enjoy it? But it's full of seeming contradictions and paradoxes that we have to navigate in order to benefit from it in the way that we want, I would say. As we've mentioned before, the irony of the spiritual path is there is no path. You're just here right now. And this point really can be looked at in an introspective and deep way to bring out some obvious solutions to many of the things that plague us, especially inwardly, meaning stress, anxiety, sadness, depression. If we simply recognize that what we want inwardly, if we simply recognize that what we want, we already have, then the whole path, journey, search, mission becomes absurd because there's no such thing. That's the paradox that we're discussing right now. And the continual paradox that we must come to terms with to feel better more of the time. And it's an absurdity, seemingly. You have what you want right now. Literally. See, those external desires are all really clamoring for something that you already have within you. What you want to experience, you already have within you. Again, so much of the material we've gone over and a lot of the meditations that I've led us through in this podcast are just referencing and talking about this point. You are what you are seeking, literally. And so just by recognizing that you are what you are seeking and that it's not that certain relationship or that certain job or that better health, but it's you, what you already have. Just by recognizing that, everything's fine. And the issue we run into, in my opinion, over and over again, is that we fail to recognize this regularly. I'm not saying that you have to have a notebook and make sure to check in every 20 minutes about this. It's not like that. It's not a formalized outward process like that. It's more like the more you're aware of your own heartbeat, your spiritual heartbeat, your own nowness, the more you are at peace with what's happening in your life. It's so obvious. It's so obvious that we just don't choose to recognize it a lot of the time. And like I often talk about, if you jump up and down really quickly and bang your chest like a gorilla, you can recognize it that way too. It doesn't have to be in this meditative way. The point is that what you are seeking, you already are. That's the paradox. So there's nothing to seek. So this isn't a path. It's not a journey. It's just now. 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 The abundance of the moment. The inherent peace of this. And linking it explicitly to law of attraction practices, which we do not have to do whatsoever, but if we choose to. If you notice the freedom and the abundance that you already are, and you notice that more regularly, more continually, then outwardly things are going to flow into your life more easily. Things that you want. Your life will get smoother. And we can build all these other things on top of that and talk about theory and discuss some of the techniques and things we often talk about in this show. But at its base, its spiritual base, you could say, which is what I'm most interested, generally speaking, in sharing with you and talking about and practicing myself. At its spiritual base, it's just recognizing the abundance of right now and knowing that it's all good. And we can confuse ourselves and wonder why we don't recognize this more easily and ponder as to why it is that we have seemingly such a predisposition to become negative and to become anxious and worried, as opposed to just recognizing this moment for the goodness and abundance that it is. But really what I'm saying is none of that even matters. It's just here right now, and it's always here. We choose not to acknowledge it over and over again. And you can just as easily choose to acknowledge it, really, if we take a step back. So let's take a step back more often, I'd say. That's what I'm attempting to do in my own life. And I have a feeling that's what you're attempting to do too. So let's just be aware of that, not be embarrassed by doing that. It's not normal behavior, perhaps, but in my opinion, it's very sane behavior.